Hello, everybody. It's me, Lamani. Happy Monday. I hope every single one of you are happy, healthy, well, and I hope you're thriving. I know me personally, I'm over my COVID. We're just a little bit still on the mend, but things are much, much better. So I wanted to start your Monday off on a positive note. I wanted to give you some fun builds to play for the week, and then we're going to do it a little bit differently. So today I'm going to give you my top 3 damage builds for PvP. Now, a lot of you may be asking, why am I giving you damage builds? I'm a healer main. But with the amount of PvP I've played, I think it gives me the credentials to tell you what comps I struggle against the most, what blows me up, and what really thrives in the PvP setting. I have seen absolutely everything, I heal against everything, and there are some really solid meta builds out there, but I just want to give you, for anybody who's curious, my top 3 high damage builds to help you succeed in the current meta for PvP, whether it's OPR, War, 1v1s. These are the 3 that I think are just, in general, the strongest, and they fit multiple different styles of play, and I'll give you options, talk a little bit about, okay, how can you excel with this one, what might be some different play styles for it, so that everybody can kind of figure out what fits them best. So, before we get started, I just want to say, thank you for everything. We'll be picking our winners today for the giveaway. I'll be DMing those people. I'll announce it live on Twitter. If you want to connect with me, feel free to leave a comment later, DM me in Discord, join our Discord, follow me on Twitch, follow our TikTok, our Twitter, our everything if you want to keep up to date. If you're also interested, we still have our company on Eden, growing every single day, a lot more 60s, and we're looking to push some more end game content, get things rolling and more coordinated in the next few weeks. But no matter what, if you need something, feel free to DM me. These builds, I'll be giving you my best theoretical build setup for them, the gearing options for them, the attribute breakdowns, and kind of like the play style and how they actually function in these PvP environments. So I just want all of you to sit back, take a deep breath, relax, and get ready for this week, and hopefully some of these builds will help you excel, put your gameplay to the top, help you climb the leaderboards in PvP, and just pump out more damage in general. And I know that I absolutely hate some of them, so I hope you can use them to be an absolute menace out there in the battlefield. Let's get into it with build number 1. All right, so build number 1, I don't think this is going to surprise anybody, but the thing I hate playing against the most, and what I would debate maybe takes a little smoothness in your brain to play, jokes, but I would say Great Axe Warhammer is one of the best builds right now for damage in PvP. You have high CC, high damage, high AoE damage, and it just takes a few buttons to do it. So let me break down the build and how this will look for you. You'll end up taking everything on the Reaper side as far as passives go, because we want to get to Bloodlust for that free extra damage and movement. And we're not going to take any of these abilities except for Charge, and you will have to take the first point into the Charge passive so that we can get Bloodlust. Now, Charge is going to act as your gap closer. You can also use it as a quick second ability, but the passives in this side give you a lot of empower. So you'll get Greed. Whenever you light attack, you get a damage stack. Whenever you crit, you get healing. You get more healing, critical damage. When you hit below 30% health, you get healing. Great Axe attacks below 30% health, you have increased crit chance. You just have so much extra damage here. If they block, you get 15% damage. Armor Pen, a lot of good stuff here. And then the farther you charge them, the more damage you do. And then just this 15% damage on Bloodlust. A lot of passive damage over here. But the real big thing is getting charged for the gap closing mobility piece of it. Next, we'll be going all the way into Maelstrom. Maelstrom is an insane ability. When you have enough gear, a good enough Great Axe, you can pretty much click Maelstrom on a light armor player and kill them when they're inside of your Gravwell, and that's the other ability we'll be taking, and it is just absurd. So Maelstrom, you'll do it. It'll pull everybody around and do a nice little chunk of damage. You get increased pull range. You'll take block all projectiles when it's active. So I've had beacons blocked. You can have any projectile, arrows, spells, everything gets blocked when you're using it. And then this last piece basically does the same thing. I think about Reap. This is just a AoE Reap. It's going to make you do a second little spin after you pull people in and just do more damage. It's basically a blender, people. It is absurd. So then we'll take Gravwell. We'll put in both the points. So you'll get more damage for each foe in it. And then you'll also just get a 10% fortify if you're in your own well. That one's up to you if you want to take or not. But the other big point I think you should then take is just Enduring Strike. So whenever you heavy attack, you get a damage reduction. Great one. You get some grit here. And you will have grit anyway with the way we put out our attributes. But I would say, in general, for the Great Axe, you can choose whatever you want here. You could flex out of this point. Maybe you want to take Crowded Protection and Center of Attention for more PvP scenarios. I would say that's another way you can do it. Either do a build like this or do something where you get rid of these 2 points and take this. So if you're coming from the bookmark, this is the Great Axe build. And what I will say is you either take this point and this point like this, or if you don't want that heavy reduction and you're playing in more group PvP, take these two. You'll get 10% damage increase and a 10% fortify from that. So it's totally up to you. Now for the Warhammer, we're going to be playing this as our CC kind of utility setup. I'll give you 2 options here though for damage or for more CC focused. First thing, we're going to take outnumbered, damage absorption by 10% if you're surrounded by people. We'll go into then Shockwave, and we'll take both the points. Big thing with Shockwave, it weakens everybody, and then we'll take the perk for Sundering Shockwave to apply another rend, and then just a bigger radius. We'll then go into Path of Destiny, and we'll actually take all the points. This will be very big in coordinated group PvP because you can just keep resetting it and just keep spamming them into groups. We'll take Concussive Impact, more damage. We'll take this for some haste so we can move around. And then you can kind of choose what you want to go into next. We'll take, I think personally, just take Prevailing Spirit for some extra healing. And then we'll get into Aftershock for this slow when they're affected by a CC. And then on the Juggernaut side, again, we have some options. This is mainly where our options will lie. I'll say cookie cutter wise, we're going to want these first 11 points. And the rest are going to be kind of up to you. But I think gaining power on heavy attack, because you have these giant windows when you shockwave people. I would say then too, if you want to just spam heavy attacks, you could go into Hardened Steel if that's kind of your play style, or you could go into exhaustive attacks. For me personally, I think it's a little tougher to constantly heavy attack. Do we need this grit? I don't know. So I think that taking this one for exhaustive attacks is actually really, really strong in PvP. PvE wise, I'd take Hardened Steel if I'm just going to spam the Warhammer. If you think you're going to mainly spam your Warhammer and just hit heavy attack all the time, this is definitely a solid one to take. But otherwise, I'll take exhaustive attacks. Getting that stam regeneration reduction is actually really nice. And then it also applies a debuff for concussive impact. So then I would go into Wrecking Ball for more CC, take the Fortify, and then make it so we can knock everybody down. Then we'll take Quick Recovery, so we get the heavy attack synergy. And then, again, you have options. I would probably personally go into Epitome of Bonk for just more armor pen. And then you can decide, do you think Power Through the Pain is nicer for you? Or do you want Contemption for that increased heavy attack damage when they're below 30% health? Again, your choice, totally up to you. I'd probably do something like this. Now, what's your alternative? If you don't want to take Wrecking Ball, actually, another solid PvP option is taking Armor Breaker. And we take that because we get grid on it and we get a 20% rend. That is a very large rend to apply on a single ability. So, and it's 10 seconds, so it's a really, really good option. This is what I would say is probably one of my favorite one you can use in more types of content because we're running that rend when that hammer is more of a utility weapon and the axe is where your weapon damage is really going to come into play. So if you're coming from the bookmark, this is the cookie cutter I would suggest, but you have 2 options as far as your last ability. If you want more CC, take Wrecking Ball. Go like this, you get a Fortify, get a big CC, and you can flatten everybody, gives you more opportunities for your team to do damage. But if you want to get a pretty solid rend so you can just blow people up, I would take this into Armor Breaker. We get grid on it, and we have a big rend. Big chunk of damage, swap to your axe and just light them up. So these are your builds. Use whatever you would like to use. All right, let's talk gearing and attributes just for this Great Axe and Warhammer setup. What I'm going to tell you is I think you could be great no matter what you choose to do at 300 strength and 150 constitution. Those are your points I think you can hit pretty easily, and then eventually pushing 300 to 200 once you're really BIS build. But the reason being, you need this grit. This grit makes it insanely strong, and having that 150 con is a really good spot for your health, whether you're in light, medium, or heavy. What I will say is if you're probably in medium or light and you want to just pump more damage, you could probably go 350 strength, 100 con, and just really, really pump things out. But I think 300 strength, 150 con is pretty insane. And then what you can do is you can still effectively play in light armor. A lot of people who are playing this build in PvP play in light. And going for that 150 con is okay because we get still that 20% bonus damage. And then you still get 30% bonus healing, and that does apply to everything on your Great Axe. So keep that in mind as well. You can really play the Great Axe and the Hammer in any loadout. I see people play it in heavy, I see people play it in medium, I see people play it in light, and I still can get one shot by all of them. It just depends on your playstyle. If you want to be tankier, go heavy. If you're just more comfortable in medium and still want to put out pretty solid damage, go medium. But if you want to be like an assassin, more mobile, rolling around, you can go light and you will blow people up. That is the majority of the player base that runs this build. They do run light or they go heavy. There's not really that medium crowd, but that light is just absolutely insane. What perks are we going to be looking for? I'd say in your gear, the perks you need to have: Insatiable Gravwell. You can then go for Enfeebling Maelstrom to put weakness on people. And then on the hammer, it's absolutely necessary that you have Sundering Shockwave to apply that rend. Those are the three main ones you're going for. On your weapon, on your axe, look for things like Keen Vicious, and then Rogue and Keenly Empowered for that third slot, something in that nature. But Vicious and Keen are going to be really nice. And same thing with the hammer as well. In our hammer, I would suggest, or in both, just with the amount of CC, you could run double Malachite. Now, there is some talk, actually, that in these axe strength builds, if you run a 50% ice damage scaling, so the aquamarine, it actually does more damage for your axe. So consider that as well. But otherwise, you can run an emerald. You can literally run whatever you're thinking. The Malachite or the emerald are typically what I would tend to use. You could also debate on opal if you feel good about that stamina usage, but those are probably easier to use in medium armor. So gem, either aquamarine if you want to try that route, emerald, or malachite. As far as jewelry goes, I would say on your neck, you're going to want, just run the infinity crystal, honestly. I don't have it on me right now, but you're going to want health, and fortified is good, or the empowered one is good, but really focus for health on your neck at least. On your ring slot, there's a couple things you could do. I would look for a keen hardy ring, so you get the crit bonus, and then you have some stamina increase so that you can dodge more. And then your earring, you're going to be looking for the regenerating, refreshing, and then any kind of potion one that may apply to you, or just some kind of third utility slot. That's all I'd say for gearing on this build. This build is just going to really excel at keeping people close. It has all the CC between Path of Destiny, pulling with Maelstrom, or Reap if you ran that build. The heavy attack pulls you can build into it. Grav Wells, everything that you do, you can keep them locked down. Wrecking Ball, everything on the hammer, and it's insane the amount of damage that you can do. This clip of mine coming up is a personal favorite. I'm just sitting here healing, and all of a sudden, Randy Orton RKO, I'm dead one shot because it does so much damage. Yes, I was testing with light armor, so I get it, but again, that's somebody in medium armor, and then imagine they're playing in light, and then I switch to medium armor. They're still going to do a ton of damage, no matter what armor loadout they're using, what I'm using, and that's AoE too. That was with Maelstrom damage that just did that to me in light armor. So, keep your eyes peeled, but if you really want to pump and make it easy, run this build. All right, build number 2. This isn't going to surprise people, but we're going to go with the bow. Bow is one of the strongest range setups for any kind of PvP right now in a group setting. You can do so much damage. You can almost one-shot people in light armor. It's absurd. How are we going to set this up? Skirmisher side, this ultimate is horrible, so we're not even going to think about it, but we'll take Evasive Tactics. This synergizes really well with the 300 Dex perk. We then get a giant crit with 20% more damage. We will take Volley, and we're going to take Poison Shot all the way through, and we're going to take Mark as well. And this is going to be it for the Skirmisher side. You can dash and then use a Rain of Arrows and chunk people for 75% of their health. Also, just shoot off a Poison Shot in a group, and everybody has a dot for 20 seconds. So it's a lot of constant damage. If they get hit by this too, then they have a bleed for 12. Lot of pressure applied from the bow. Now, on the Hunter side, we'll take 20% damage if they're at least 10 meters away. That's essentially just free damage constantly. And this will be one of your strongest sources of damage. 20% more when they're 20 meters away. You have 10% increased damage after each hit. And when you shoot this through a point on OPR, through doorway to doorway, you will hit a bunch of people and just light up the damage meter. This is insane how much damage it does. We'll take heavy attack arrows, fly faster, and deal more damage. We'll take 20% more damage to targets below 50% health. We'll then take arrow range, increase the distance arrows travel, before being affected by gravity, so it's easier to hit targets. Take surprise attack, and then we'll take Hawkeye, and we'll also take Bullseye, so that we can finally get into concussion. And when we hit that headshot, we get a nice little heal, we do 20% more damage, and we have a 50% chance to get our arrow back when we're doing some PvE. So for general PvP purposes, this is the bow setup I would suggest for doing the most damage. It's not a dueling setup. This is for group PvP, but I would still say this is very strong in any kind of 1v1 duel. Pen Arrow's insane, Rain of Arrows is insane, and Poison Shot applies a lot of good AoE pressure. Alternatively, what you could do is you could get rid of Poison Shot and take Evade Shot, put the points into it, and then go Mark. If this is really the route you really want to go, it's just another option. So if you're coming from the bookmark for group PvP setups, this is what I would suggest. For OPR, wars, everything else, this is going to be fantastic for that kind of PvP, a high damage output build. But if you're looking to duel or do some 1v1s, this is the build I would suggest using. You can also use this one. All right, so to combo with your bow, I'm going to give you two options really quick. I won't go super in depth, but I'm going to say Rapier is probably your best option for more mobility so that you can just pop off more arrow shots, counter people and stun them if they get up close to you. And if you're familiar with any of my healing setups, this is going to look pretty much identical to what I would normally do. So I do something like this, take these points. You can then consider, do I want this? I'd probably go here, take these two, and then I would honestly put into that point. This is the setup I think is best for Rapier PvP. Whatever weapon you use gives you a high amount of mobility. If anybody gets up in your face, you can quickly riposte them, get away, and then you use this to kind of clear ground, reset so you can get away to get more arrow shots off. There's a lot of cooldown reduction, there's a lot of haste, and there's a lot of ways to be slippery and get away from targets so that you can reposition and shoot off more arrows. It's fantastic, and you can even start using this for high damage because you'll have so much dex and duel people and just finish them off with a couple melee hits. This dash will do a ton of damage as well, just going through an AoE kind of clump of people, and you could potentially get resets and just keep dashing back and forth and do a little blender action there. But if you're coming from the bookmark, this is probably the most effective mobility and quick damage output to combo with the bow. Now, if you want to be more slippery, have a little bit more CC, and really 1v1 the people that get up in front of you, I would say use a spear. How would I set up my spear personally? I really prefer using a skewer setup. So this is something I use in my hybrid healing build if I ever use a spear, but it looks a little something like this. We'll take this so we can get a lot of bleed synergy and we get some more output. We'll take this to get increased light attack chance. We'll also take this to get a reduction in cooldown. This is all going to be about reducing cooldowns, dashing around, and just maintaining a bunch of mobility around the target. And we'll use our crits to maintain our bleed, and we'll have a lot of debuffs we can throw in throughout the build. Personally, I think we should just take Deadly Consistency, we'll take Sweep, turn this into a heavy attack at the end of coup de grace, and then we'll take the synergy to get successful heavy attacks give us more cooldown reduction. This is all going to be based around aggressive maneuvers. So you want to dash or roll into skewer. You want to dash back and then vault kick, and then that double synergizes with a 30% reduction and a 20% reduction. And then you want to dash and then coup de grace and sweep. And then the coup de grace is going to give you more reduction, and you can just keep chaining these abilities and keep them pretty much CC locked and annihilate anybody you can land hits on. The last couple points I would suggest, you have some options. I would probably say take finishing blows to get really finish off targets and have that execute. And then the last point I would say is take invigorating crits. You'll crit a lot. You have crit synergy just all over the build when they're bleeding of an additional 15% crit chance. You have dex, so you have another 5 built in. And then taking invigorating crits, anytime we're critting, we get 20 stamina so that we can keep jumping around. You dash around, you hop around a lot with this build, so you need that built-in stamina. All right, let's talk gearing and attributes for the bow setup. Honestly, you're just going to go full dex scaling as much as you're comfortable with, and same thing with the con. If you want to be a full glass cannon and not even go 50 con, be my guest. Typically, I think if we're going to run a light armor setup, this is what I'm going to highly suggest. And then I would probably play with the rapier over the spear, but I would say sit at like 400 dex, 50 con is a good number. Otherwise, 350 dex, 100 con would probably be a solid number as well. In general, though, you're going to want to play with light armor in these kinds of builds so that you have a ton of mobility. But the big point to get, no matter what, whatever you choose your health, is to have this guaranteed critical hit after a dodge. You can then apply that to rain of arrows or pen shot, and then everybody hit by it is going to get crit, and it's going to do a massive chunk of damage. So you at least want this 300 dex point. And again, we're just going to go full dex scaling because our primary damage is the bow. Sure, if you run a rapier, you could argue you could go into int. That's really what you want to do, you can. But again, the focus is the bow damage, and that's only going to scale dex. So you can either go more glass cannon, you could go more int if you really wanted to and play more with your rapier, but I would suggest probably about 400 dex, 50 con. For gearing, playing light, that's all I'm going to say. So it's going to be light head, medium chest, rest light. The perks you're going to be looking for, you could go for any of the bow ones, although they're not really that necessary. Fortifying rate of arrows could be nice. Refreshing pen shot could be really good for PvP just to get resets. Otherwise, maybe enfeebling poison shot if you want the weakness, but it's only 4 seconds, so it's not that great. But the big ones we're really looking for are the rapier ones. If you run that rapier, you're going to want sundering riposte. You're going to want omnidirectional evade. and you're going to want your reset for tornado spin if you can get a critical hit from behind. Those are all going to be really big. If you go the spear route, enfeebling skewer is an absolute must, and the bleed on sweep are the other ones. So if you can fit somehow those 5 or 3, the more mandatory ones are for the rapier, if anything. The rest are kind of quality of life. And then same thing goes with the spear. It's those 2 that are really mandatory. The bow ones are not so much. As far as jewelry goes, again, next still going to be getting like health on it, and then whatever else you can fit in. Health, refreshing, whatever you can think of. And then on the ring, we're going to want crit. Crit's going to be big. So keen, hardy, that'll be really nice. And then earrings, same thing. We want regenerating, refreshing, and then insert third utility. On the bow, big things. We want vicious, keen. It's always really good on a weapon. And then same thing with the rapier. But again, don't forget that rapier, we could even roll with some of those perks, like maybe Sundering or Post, if you could really fit it on there and you can't get it on your gear. But ideally, we would have like vicious, keen rolls on both of them. And then whenever you have a legendary, insert whatever that third one is, that's just going to give you more of a damage boost. You'll see the bow is just an insane source of damage. Watch this lineup right at the start of an OPR. You'll see all these arrows flying through, the volley coming in. It does hit a lot of people, but then watch me get hit by 2 pen shots there and almost die. That's what you can do with a bow. You can have insane range. You can have AoE, kind of crowd clearing ability, and just maintaining points. Rain of arrows does a ton of damage and keeps people back. Your pen shots shoot through everybody and just absolutely chunk every single person they're hit by. But you can just keep flinging arrows out into crowds, shooting rains of arrows, shooting pen shots, shooting poison clouds, and you have a ton of AoE damage. You have that single target capability, and you will surely be one of the top damage dealers in any PvP environment. All right, my third build is going to involve a Void Gauntlet, and there's 2 ways we can set this up, depending on how we pair its counterpart, the Ice Gauntlet, but this is a really effective, solid PvP build that I think is absolutely insane right now. You have 2 options. If you want to run Void Blade and mainly have Void Gauntlet damage, we're just going to go full left side Annihilation. So we'll take all these points. This is going to give us a lot of crit synergy, a lot of empowers, a lot of fortify, a lot of damage and healing, and in general, these perks are the best in PvP. If we take Nullifying Oblivion, we can remove all the buffs on a target. And if we take Petrifying Scream, we can apply a disease on the healer so they can't heal as much. We can root people with this, get a Fortify with this. We have healing and everything all over the board. Like, we can heavy attack when we have 3 stacks, get a 15% weapon damage heal, and then Leeching Agony when we crit, we get a 15% of the damage heal. We get healing from Void Caller, and then with Voracious Blade perk, when we're below 50% health, we get a flat amount of healing. It's insane. We run something like Nothingness and do a Leech build. You can't really be stopped. It is crazy. With this kind of build, though, you can pair it with the Ice Gauntlet I'm going to list, but it may be better suited for one of my life staffs. So check back in some of those other videos and really combo this if you want to do a pure Void Blade leeching build, pair it with a life staff, and just go to town in PvP. So if you're coming from the bookmark, this first Void Gauntlet build revolves around playing Void Blade as your main damage source. You'll just go up, you'll CC them, you'll give yourself a damage boost, and you'll remove all their buffs with Oblivion and just start blowing up massive groups of people. What I will say is, while you can play this kind of build with an Ice Gauntlet if that's what you prefer, this style of Void Gauntlet will excel when you use a life staff on the side. You'll get more healing, you would want to go more focus into it, but this is the kind of build that I cover in a lot of my other videos. All right, now for the other Void Gauntlet, this is going to be more mage heavy, where you focus on using your Ice Gauntlet or using one-shot Ice Spike setups that are really dominating the meta right now. We're not going to focus on getting an ultimate, because these are kind of hard if you aren't using a Void Blade or anything like that to generate stacks. Sure, you might be able to pull it off with Orb, but I just don't think it's as worth using. You can if you'd like to, and if you want a build like that, maybe consider looking up some of my other videos. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something like this, where I take Keen Confidence, go into Refreshing Precision for more cooldown reduction, crit stuff. We want some more healing potential to maintain our own health. We'll take Refreshing Frailty. We have to take Scream, and we'll take that Fortify, but that Fortify does go away when we weapon swap. So it's not super big, but if you keep it on and just maybe take a hit or 2, it can be nice. And then more crit there, and then I would suggest taking Empowering Proximity. The big ones on this side then, we'll just take Orb to maintain a nice little heal on ourselves, or some damage, and we can just double pop it right away to get some nice AoE damage into, because we're int scaling, so it should hit pretty hard. We'll then take mana cost reduction, and I would suggest taking Mending Evasion. What we then can do is when we get to full mana, by maybe we're just juicing ourselves up with Reap Soul or whatever it's called, Harvest Essence, and we can get a nice big heal here, quick for us to maintain our health. And then this last point, totally up to you. If you want to take Forsaken Pact, go for it. But I'd maybe take Void Caller. If somebody's up in your face, you use this. You can use it in a big group. If you hit 6 people, more power to you for that AoE. But the nice thing is when you switch weapons, it actually just drops on the ground and continues to work. So you can get some Void Caller usage out of this if you would like to as well. Now, let's say maybe you want to go on the other side of things. We could remove, I would say, Void Caller. I would get rid of Empowering Proximity. And then I would probably get rid of Refreshing Frailty, and you'd have to get rid of this healing. But we could go into this side if you want to use your Void Gauntlet a little more and go into Glimpse of the Void. So where would I go? I would probably go into Leeching Bolts. I'd probably take Fervent Thirst, and I would maybe take Deadly Range. And then you would actually have to get rid of the Fortifying Echoes at least, so you have enough points to get to Glimpse of the Void. And then the option's up to you. You could just take this to extend debuff durations, or you could take this to get some cooldown reduction. I'd probably just go this route, to be honest with you, and you could take Glimpse of the Void. You could then just have a better route for when people are up in your face, more Oblivions, more Orb of Decay, if you hit a point where you can use it in AoE. So that is the big thing. You have to be able to AoE and hit multiple targets with this orb if you want it to work, because it doesn't proc on Oblivion. It only procs on Scream and Orb. So you need to AoE people, but you can then heavy attack and reset everything. So if you're coming from the bookmark, if you want to be a pure mage setup and have Glimpse of the Void resets, this is the build I would suggest. We drop the Fortify over here so that we can get into Glimpse of the Void, because this Fortify drops anyway when we switch weapons. Now, if you want more of a damage-heavy Void Gauntlet, I would do something like this on this side for your mage setup. Let me clarify that. We go like this. We take that. We'll go into here, 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 here. I would then take this, and then I would take this. Or sorry, I would take that, and then I would take this. If this is the more damage-centered one you would want, and you don't want to run Glimpse of the Void, this is the other one I would suggest. All right, now the other one to combo really well with the Void Gauntlet, and probably your main source of damage, is actually going to be the Ice Gauntlet. Right now, what's dominating the PvP meta is one-shot Ice Spike. You have to aim it a little weirdly, and we'll talk about that, but this is how you'd set it up. We take all the points into Ice Spike, and the big thing is that we get Spiky Reach so that ice shards blow out from the side, and if you aim it properly, you can essentially hit them with the big spike that does a ton of damage, and each of those shards, and it just blows them up in one shot. Now, we could take Cold Reach, because we're going to main our Ice Gauntlet here, and it's going to do more damage. Our Void Gauntlet is more of a CC, just extra dot, kind of utility weapon. We'll take increased crit damage. We'll then go all the points into Ice Storm, because we're going to take this for giant chunks of AoE damage, and then it's going to synergize really well with Ultimate Chill. So if we can put down Ice Storm and then hit them with Roots and all of that, and then hit them with the Ice Spike, it's going to do 25% more damage on top of everything else, and it's just crazy. Heavy Freeze is very nice for some extra CC. If they touch your Ice Storm, you can then hit them with the heavy attack, and they will be rooted. Why not take that? We'll take the increased crit chance, and that's about it. We're not going to take any of these mana ones, because we can force mana back on our Void Gauntlet, and when we do a dash or a dodge, we get mana back, and you can use your mana potions. They're pretty cheap, and so I think it's more worth, so that we can then take Quick Frost and get movement speed increase, but we can take all the points into Ice Shower and get this 10% rend, doing more damage, we get more speed, and we increase the duration. This is going to be great for when people try to charge you, setting up those one-shot Ice Spikes. One-shot Ice Spike will be set up mainly by Ice Shower or the Scream. When you have them in a route, a hard, long route, you can just blow them up in one shot if you can aim it correctly. This is your giant source of AoE damage, but in single target, it's also going to pump, and it's pretty insane. So this works really well in the current meta, high damage ranged mage setup. Now, the other setup you could use, if you don't want to really use one-shot Ice Spike, you want more of your Void Gauntlet, you're using Void Blade, and you want that to be your primary, here's what I'm going to suggest you do. You're going to have to drop Ice Spike, but again, even if you have that, you could just rotate between a one-shot Ice Spike setup and then go over to the Void Gauntlet. But if you're maining a Void Gauntlet, you might want some survivability, so I would say run something like this. We're actually going to drop Ice Spikes, and then we're going to take these 2 perks, allowing us to get Ultimate Chill so that we can still do more damage, and then we're just going to throw our last 3 points into Entombed. Entombed is great if you need to just buy some time. Maybe your Void Blade isn't back up. Maybe you need it just to, knock everybody back in a little AoE circle, or you need to get some mana back quick. You can entomb yourself, and the perk for this will give you some health back as well. So, if you're coming from the bookmark, what I would mainly suggest is running a one-shot Ice Spike. This is dominating the damage meta. You would go into these points like this, taking this, and this would be your one-shot Ice Spike setup. You just have to aim this a little differently, do some AoE damage, or root them from this, and then also root them and rend them from this. It's fantastic, but maybe you want to run more of a Void Blade. What I would suggest doing then, and running more of a Void Gauntlet, is something like this for more defensive utility to buy yourself time or set up better Blade burst windows.
All right, let's talk gearing and attributes for this setup. What am I going to want? Well, for attributes, there's two things I would suggest doing. If you want more of a tanky mage build, a lot of what some people are running these days, Ice Gauntlet, Void Gauntlet, you run a Void Blade, you go 200 con, and then the rest end. It's very, very tanky. You play that in medium armor, and you have like 13k health, a ton of armor, and a ton of damage still, because the Void Blade is just outrageous. So that's something you can do. Also, if you want to run a one-shot Ice Spike, you may just want to go light armor, go like 50 con, right? Get like the little health consumable thing, have a little bit of backup health, and then just pump the rest int and go into light armor and be able to roll around and be pretty mobile. Because one thing this build does lack, as long as you aren't kind of exploiting the bug for sliding with your Void Gauntlet, you don't have much mobility. So playing in light armor, going for one shots is another option. You'll put out a ton of AoE, a ton of single target, and that's probably the way I would choose to play it. You would have to do more of a mage heavy setup on your Void Gauntlet, running Orb, Scream, and Oblivion, and then running the one shot with the Ice Spike setup that we talked about, and just going probably into like 400 int 50 con, and then, as you get more int with more gear, just pump more int. That's what I would say. These points, again, it's not super worth to have the 300 point, so that's why you can run one of those like 250 int 200 con builds, but the choice is yours. Either medium or light armor are going to be good for this one. So for gearing, like I was saying, we either want the light damage bonus or we want that medium tankiness with some damage bonus. As far as perks on the gear, you want all of your Void Gauntlet ones. So you want Voracious Blade, you want Putrefying Scream, and you want Nullifying Oblivion. These are going to be insanely strong, and you absolutely need them for this build setup. It's fantastic for PvP, and nothing comes even close. Your one other option for Void Gauntlet perks is actually Diminishing Orb too. If you run Orb in your build, functions very similarly to Nullifying Oblivion, except it just halves the durations of all active buffs on a player. So if I have a 10-second heal over time, I get hit by an orb, it's now down to 5. So just another really solid one to throw into the build if you're running one-shot Ice Spike. As far as the Ice Spike goes, what I would say is one of the most necessary perks is Unending Thaw. This is going to make it so when they get hit by your Ice Storm that they're still having that frost effect for 2 more seconds, so you can still hit them with the heavy attack and then root them. That one's really nice. The next one is Deadly Frost, which then makes it so your frigid showers on your ice shower actually do damage, but this one's really expensive and hard to find. And then if you really could fit it somewhere, but I don't think this one's necessary, getting Ice Refresh just to get Ice Spike resets every time you kill somebody, getting that cooldown reduced is actually pretty nice. But if I had to pick 5, I'd go the 3 on the Void Gauntlet, Unending Thaw, and Deadly Frost. As far as accessories, it's going to be the same kind of thing. Try to at least get health on your amulet and get whatever else you can that synergizes well. And then on the ring, you're going to want frost damage or void damage would be good, or you can opt for crit. I would honestly say getting, depending on what is your main weapon, like for instance, I just have a void damage ring right here. If I'm going to run more Void Gauntlet, I'll run a void damage ring. If I'm going to run more Ice Gauntlet, I'll run an ice ring, and then I'll try to get hardy on it or something so I can dash around a little bit more. And then on the earring, we're going to want regenerating and refreshing at least, and then whatever else you can in that 3rd slot. As far as the weapons go, you know the drill. It's going to be Vicious Keen. On the Ice Gauntlet, it's going to be really nice, but on the Ice Gauntlet, I would say run a Malachite because you can do so much CC and so much slowing, so that's going to come in handy. On the Void Gauntlet, it's a little different. For instance, this is my Void Gauntlet. I would highly suggest in one of these like Leech builds, and something else you can do is on your ring, run some Leech for more healing, but I think you might get more by just running Void damage. But running a Void Gauntlet like Nothingness is one of the best in the game, giving you that life-stealing effect, enchanted, and then just high top-end damage is great. But if I really had to pick for my Void Gauntlet, I would run Vicious Keen, and then maybe Life Stealing or something of that nature, or something of that setup. But if you're just looking for a quick guaranteed craft, Nothingness is a really good option. As far as the gem that can go in it, it's up to you. I run an Opal just because I'm a lot more mobile when I'm using my Void Gauntlet. I'm running medium, so I just do a quick hop step and then keep that damage multiplier up. You could run an Emerald. You could even scale Ice for frost damage if you have that on your ring. So you could run an Aquamarine, and the choice is up to you. Totally your choice. But that's what I would say as far as gems go. I think the big thing with these setups is you have a high amount of AoE damage to deny points, and even with that, you have a ton of single target damage too if you properly spec into that one-shot setup. Here I'm running the one-shot Ice Spike with a Void Blade actually, and I always try to one-shot and I switch over to the Blade. You can take on 2v1, 3v1s definitely with your Blade out. You have enough healing, enough damage to keep yourself sustained, and you can keep the fight going. Switch over to your Ice Gauntlet, do some AoE damage, do whatever you need to do to stay alive and win fights. Ice Gauntlet, Void Gauntlet is just a setup that meshes both worlds, right? You have great range damage and can stay far away, but you can also get the job done up close, burst for a ton, and heal. So it kind of has everything in the build. Whatever you'd want, healing, damage, ranged, melee, CC, just lacks some mobility, but it is still very, very strong in the current meta. Alright, so I think those are the 3 builds that are dominating the meta currently in PvP. I hope all of you give them a shot. Let me know which ones you like best, or maybe let me know which ones I may have missed. I want to know what else you all are using and what is just pumping damage out there right now. So, as always, thank you all for the support. Thank you for watching. If you want to connect with me, leave a comment, DM me in Discord, join our Discord. We'll be pulling our giveaway winner today. If you want to follow the Twitter and the TikTok, that'd be great too. I stream on Twitch Monday, Wednesday, Friday, starting around 10 to 10:30 a.m. Depends on the day, depends on how I'm feeling. And if you want to join our company and play with us and really get things rolling, we play on NA East Eden, and then we are Covenant right now. If you want to support me directly, feel free to hit up my Patreon. Thank you all of you who have done that. Thank you Jacob, Thuggius, Shane, Gill, Anarino, Ajuro, Nathaniel, Thonar, Joseph, Tarvi, Generic Guy, Ronan, Ralph, Bob, Florian, Blue Beagle, GDB, Jay Kitchens, Dexter, Rich, Rob, Josh, Michelle, Nade, Rich, and Peter. Thank you all for your direct support, but thank you every single one of you just for watching the video. I appreciate all that support, all that kindness from the bottom of my heart, honestly. So, thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening, and thank you every single one of you for being you.